Being that it's 5:15, I'd like to call the annual budget meeting committee of the whole to order. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call has been taken.
It has.
Thank you. We'll move on to the presentation of the budget. We'll go first with debt services. Judy?
All right, we're gonna start with the debt service budget. I usually start with this one because there usually isn't any deviation from what is anticipated in payments for next year towards our debt service and what we're going to pay. So are we gonna put this up on the screen or? Please and thank you. All right, so our 2026 annual debt service for, I already said 26, but if we go down to next page, up one, there we go. So the principal payments that will be made during 2026 in the amount of $719,045, interest $387,243, and the total debt service for 2026 $1,106,288. And if you look at the next page, one of the things I wanted to point out is at the end of 2025, the city had a debt, a total amount of debt of $11,950,000. And according to our 2024 audit and state statute, we are allowed to have 5% of our equalized value. So that dollar amount was almost $30 million. We are at about $12 million. When we speak with Ellers, they always suggest we retain 1/3 of that dollar amount. So the difference currently capacity is about $8 million. Any questions on the debt service going into 2026? We did add the two new instruments, the Department of Public Works bucket truck and the Oshkosh Street for TID 4. All right. That is the debt service budget for 2026.
You got a question on that? Seeing none, we'll move on to the presentation of the general fund budget. Chad?
All right, as we start out here, we usually kick it off with a budget memo. Great. I'll quickly go through it. As we reflect on the past year, it's clear that New London continues to show positive signs of growth. One example of this is the city's population increase over the past 3 years, as estimated by the Department of Administration. You can see in 2025, we are about 7,600 in population, which is growth over the last 2 years. Second indicator of this growth is a steady increase of housing construction. The table below shows a number of new single-family, duplex, twin-doe, and mobile home permits issued since 2020. As you can see, as of the middle of October, we're sitting at about 23 permits issued this year, which is definitely a rise over our past 5-year trend. Apartment housing availability also is on the rise, with recent addition to Celestial Hills Apartments and the 98-unit SC Swiderski housing complex in the downtown scheduled to open in early 2026. Several factors contribute to this growth. The completion of the Highway 15 corridor has reduced commute times of the Fox Valley, making New London an increasingly attractive community. Additionally, the city's commitment to economic development through the creation of 4 tax incremental districts since 2021 has spurred investment by both the city and private developers. All 4 districts are performing well, with TID number 5, which is the downtown district, currently showing the highest district valuation. The increment generated by the downtown TID helped finance a recent downtown reconstruction project, which transformed North Water Street into a more attractive and pedestrian-friendly area. We reduced the roadway, calmed traffic, and expanded the walkways. These improvements have encouraged significant private investments, as reflected by the number of facade improvement grants we awarded since 2020. You can see 2025, we pretty much doubled what we've seen in the past. The city has been focused on several internal initiatives as well. First, our zoning update. Affordable housing remains a major statewide issue, and New London is no exception. The state of Wisconsin provides housing finance programs to communities that take advantage or take proactive steps to reducing housing costs, such as easing setbacks requirements or minimum lot sizes. The Plan Commission and the city staff have been working diligently to modernize and simplify our zoning code to support affordable housing development, and we should hopefully have that done by early 2026. Another internal focus has been implementation of our electronic timekeeping system. Currently, we are doing it old school, and all employee time cards are submitted in paper format, requiring manual entry into our payroll system. Transitioning to a digital system will hopefully reduce human error, streamline the payroll process, saving valuable time, making the process more efficient. The library reconstruction project remains on schedule for a spring 2026 opening. This project would not have been possible without the hard work of staff and our volunteers, who successfully secured an initial $3.9 million flexible facilities program grant in late 2024. The city was later awarded an additional $350,000, bringing the total grant fund to $4.25 million. Meanwhile, the New London Public Museum and its Friends Group are preparing to expand into the entire building currently shared with the library. This expansion will provide new programming, exhibit space, and allow the museum to broaden its services to community. As we move forward in talking about grants, I want to acknowledge the tremendous success our staff and partners have had recently in securing external funding. This is a big point right now. Over the past 5 years, the city has saved taxpayers over $11 million in grant funding on various projects. Street projects being the primary grant funding recipient, the library being the largest recipient, but not forgetting that we also have recreational type of amenities like the Newton Blackmore Trail and the Riverside Boat Launch, overflow parking. So $11.8 million in grant funding over the last 5 years is something we definitely want to let the taxpayers know that we've been saving them, doing a lot of work and saving a lot of money. As we look forward to 2026 and beyond, the city's focus remains on continued growth in all sectors. New residential developments, including the Irish Meadows and SC Swiderski East Side subdivisions, are expected to move forward within the next few years, along with potential projects on the north side to meet housing demands. Staff will continue promoting commercial and industrial growth, particularly within the city's 4 active TID districts. Street improvements have been and will continue to remain a priority. Over the next 5 years, residents will see additional investments in infrastructure through projects on Highway 45 and 54. That's going to be a state project. Mill Street, primarily a county project with city assistance. Shawano Street, again, a county project with city assistance. And Pearl Street, city project. We are currently applying for another STP urban grant for that project. More information for residents can always be found at the city's dedicated street improvement webpage at newlondonwi.org/streets. The city is also preparing major infrastructure upgrades of the wastewater treatment plant in response to new DNR and EPA regulations. This will be the largest infrastructure investment in New London's history and will be utilized by generations to come. Planning will continue through the coming year with a strong focus on public outreach and communication to keep residents informed. As with many municipalities, New London's budget continues to face tight constraints. While increasing in net new construction, shared revenue, and transportation aids have provided some relief, inflation and rising healthcare insurance costs continues to outpace revenue growth. These challenges are compounded by long-standing levy limits. While many municipalities across Wisconsin have turned to public referendums to increase their operation levies, New London so far has avoided that step. Continued growth and state shared revenue support will be critical in maintaining that position, though future referendums may become necessary if revenue sources fall short and continue to outpace inflationary expenses. Looking at the 2026 proposed budget, some highlights include health insurance. The city competitively bid our health insurance plan, and like many other organizations, experienced a significant premium increase that we haven't seen in many years. Promoting workforce wellness will remain an important strategy for maintaining future costs. Another insurance, property insurance inflation continues to drive up. Replacement costs for property and equipment increase, resulting in higher premiums to pay for those expenses. Levy increases, thanks to our continued growth as seen in our net new construction values. The allowable levy limit for 2026 will be $98,000, nearly doubling last year's amount. We haven't seen an amount like that in a long time. Tax rate impact, based on preliminary assessment values, residents can expect a modest increase in the municipal tax rate this year. Approximately $84, depending on if you're Waupaca County or Allegheny County. $84 for a $200,000 assessed home. Despite inflationary pressures we've experienced, the city will maintain all our existing services, not planning on cut, for an average monthly property tax increase of about $7 per household per month. In closing, I want to recognize the dedicated hard work of our entire staff, leadership team in preparing our 2026 budget. Despite the challenges posed by levy limits, inflation, they have remained committed to responsible spending and to identifying opportunities that maximizes revenue. Special thanks always goes to Judy, our finance director, for her exceptional work in developing and managing our city budget, navigating assessed and equalized values, mill rates, TIF regulations, bondings, and hundreds of accounts is no small task. Judy approaches it with the taxpayers' best interests in mind. I and all of us look forward to working alongside our team, Common Council, and the New London residents in the year ahead as we continue to build on the city's strong momentum towards future growth and success. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Judy, you're up next.
All right, so I am going to dive into the 2026 budget. First, I want to thank all the department heads that are with us tonight. If there are any questions as we go through the presentation, the department heads are here to answer any questions you might have. A lot of this information we feel like at committee levels we have talked about, so there shouldn't be a lot of things within this budget that you haven't already seen or talked about within the respected committees. So with that being said, I will move forward into our 2026 budget. Again, if there's any questions you have as I go through the presentation, please feel free to ask. Stop right there and we'll answer those questions. All right, so first we do a really big overview of where the increases and decreases are, and we will drill down and get into more detail as we get through the presentation. So to start with, we have our expenditure decreases. There was a $10,000 decrease within the wages for the clerk and treasurer's office. We did reduce this year the retirement reserve that we will be putting aside both in the police department budget and in the general fund budget. There was a family insurance change in the library. So there was a payout, or the family insurance that went to a payout. There was also a family insurance change within the building and grounds. A single went to a family. You can see how quickly those swing our insurance premiums. And with that, we were in double digits this year almost, and we were able to keep our fringe benefits in check as we went through this 2026 budget. So our expenditure increases, you can see, outpace our reductions or decreases. And with this, our first increase was our building inspector position. We had added a half a year into the 2025 budget, knowing and talking about and discussing going into this year that we would add the additional half so that position could be fully funded. Unfortunately, on the revenue side, and so you can see this as we go through the budget, I did increase permit fees last year, almost dollar for dollar of the increase I put into the building inspection position. This year, that I was not able to do that. I did not have the data. I felt that we were just putting dollars in to cover a position, and I wasn't sure we could get there. So I didn't have the history in any of those accounts to be able to point to it and say dollar for dollar this year, I'm also going to increase the permit fees. So that didn't happen this year, but there's a lot happening within that department, and probably be quite a few changes next year. But I believe this will be enough money to fund that department moving into 2026. And then give us the additional information we need to move into 2027 to also make good choices about where that department goes. Audit was up 3,000. City Hall maintenance, everything's getting more expensive, up 5,000. Chad spoke of the insurance, up 11,008. We have 2 additional elections next year, 6,500. Our attorney is putting in additional hours within our municipal court system, 5,000. Police wages and fringes, they're up by 118,900. Please remember that part of this increase is due to a change from a payout to a family insurance. So that is a very small increase for our police department moving from one year to the next. Uniforms, this is a contractual increase, 6,700. Their uniforms are just getting more and more expensive. The museum, as we know, those buildings at some point next year, not exactly sure when that'll happen, but they'll be split where the library is in their new building, and the museum will be taking over the current library and museum. So there are additional costs. Obviously, the museum will be taking on the electric, water, and sewer there, and normally the library had that for $6,000. Also, the museum had additional wages of $10,000. This is covered by the Friends of the Museum on our revenue side. So even though it is an increase on this side, the revenue side is covering that. Recreational wages and fringes, and park and pool. These were all talked about in your recreation committee meetings. You had asked Ginger to go back and find some kind of dollars to be able to give some larger raises within those departments. That's reflected here. Also, those are on the revenue side. We went in and did some increase in, Ginger went through, and there's will be some fee increases to cover some of these costs on the expenditure side. And then the rest of the city, so I just put them in miscellaneous wages and fringes of 74,000 for wages and another $50,000 for fringes. So again, this is at a high level and we'll continue to drill down. So that's an overall increase to the city of expenditures of $341,464. On the revenue side, our shared revenue increased $72,620. And just know that shared revenue has a lot of components to it. So you probably read about the increase that shared revenue was going to see from one year to the next. And we did see a nice increase within our shared revenue, but then we also have a utility payment, an expenditure restraint payment within that dollar amount. And we did see a decrease in both of those. So even though we did see increase in county and municipal aid, those other categories did decrease. So the overall increase in shared revenue was about 72,600. State highway aids are a component of 6 years. We did see a large increase or decrease in our state shared revenue about 3 years ago. But now we're seeing that going back up because we lost one of our largest. So the more money you spend on the streets, the larger the state highway aids are. So we saw a large decrease because we had a large dollar amount come off the 6-year cycle, but now we're starting to see that creep up again. License and permits, this was plate revenue that I missed from the year before. Fines and forfeitures, $5,000. Public charges, again, here's the one from the pool, the recreation and pool, increasing in fees to help cover some of the costs of the increases we talked about above. The sewer transfer, we do a 4% increase on that every year. That increase was $6,800. And then the rest is just a miscellaneous increase. The library had a small increase and so did our tax equivalents. So on the revenue side, we went up $145,749. That's a lot of money for us. So going into this year, I was like, woohoo, you know, but then when we got our health insurance increase and you start looking at the inflationary pressures within our budget, it is a great opportunity for us to have this kind of revenue, or I'm not sure where we would, to be honest with you, where we would be sitting today. It would definitely look a lot different than it does right now. So that was a lot of relief looking at that revenue number. All right, then we'll go to the next page. This is the categories that we have to pass the budget by. That will be at the next finance committee meeting. So the general fund, the general government increased by 75,900. Just keeping in mind that that was 40,000 of that was the building inspector position. Public safety increased 126,000. Public works increased 52,000. Just know within public works, when Chad and I sat down to take a look at where we could cut expenditures, public works was fringes and wages. That's the only things that are changing in public works at $52,000. Culture and recreation, 80,000, and that again is the addition of the wages that was asked of Ginger to move forward with. Health and community services, a small $5,800. So total operational budget, $9,02,688. I am suggesting we continue with the $500,000 within our capital equipment and projects and road maintenance. So the overall increase for the city of New London would be $341,464, and that is 3.73%. I felt that that was a very good place for the city to be finding themselves as all the other pressures that are going on within this budget. So it was at one time over $400,000, and Chad and I sat down and went through this budget and with a fine tooth comb to try to find places to cut the budget so that we could come closer within the $341,000, under 4%. To any questions on that? Then the next page 7 is again the revenue side. Goes into a little bit more detail of the revenues. You can see the shared revenue on the top at $72,000 increase. Tax equivalents, you can just pretty much say that's the same. State highway aids, again, the 6-year rolling average. So we went up by $15,000. Library aids, there's the 3,200. Small amount of grants. Every interest income the same, special assessments the same. Now remember, sometimes we can collect deferred special assessments, but we can't really budget for those because we have no idea if those assessments are going to come in or not. License and permit fees, a small increase of 7,000. Fines and forfeitures, that's at license plate revenue. I missed last year, 5,000. And then public charges for services, and here again, this is to cover and help cover the cost of the increase in the parks, recreation, and pool wages. That's at 34,000. So our total revenue increase 138,000. If you add in the sewer fund transfer of 6,700, and then the TID revenue, this is the dollar amount we move from the TIDs into the general fund. For the work that we do within our offices. So that's Chad, myself, Dave, Robert, of course. Robert's usually the largest. That will account for at least $60,000 going into next year. I'm pretty sure most of Robert for Oshkosh this year. So that is a total increase of revenues of $5,000,000, almost $800,000, or 2.58%. Any questions on any of those? All right, then we go into a little bit farther into detail, and we are department by department, actually. So mayor and council is no change. Administration is up 70,000, and here again we had the addition of the building inspector position, the election increase, and wages and fringes. Insurance, that was the property insurance increase of just about 7,000. No change in community development. Public safety, again, most of that was wages and fringes, and then a small increase for uniform allowance. Fire department was wages and fringes. Small increase for ambulance, and we were super happy with that dollar amount, especially knowing we're going to actually have another ambulance within the consortium. Next page is Public Works. And again, like I said, that was all wages and fringes. You can look at their operation and maintenance line item and it was up like $1,000. Senior Center and Van, that was wages. Social Services was an increase in weights and measures. We also received the revenue on the other side. So weights and measures is just a wash. So we pay more on one side, but we charge on the other. Cemetery is no change. Library and museum, this would have been much larger, and in fact, I think it was closer to $50,000 again, those two. We will have two buildings at some point next year. But the library actually had one of their people go from a family to a payout, which saved these two a lot of money. So that was nice to see. So we're at 21,000. But when we first looked at this, it was closer to 50. Then we'll move to recreation. Again, that's the increase in, again, salaries and wages. I feel like we're broken record. And then page 10. Parks, building and grounds, wage increase. And then here we had a change from family plan to a single. And then there was fee increases to cover. The pool, we had wages and fringes and their fee increases to cover those. Cable was wages and fringes. This one also is just expenses on one side. And then we take in the additional dollars, the revenue on the other side. Washington Center Gym, there's no change. And then in the equipment of 145,000, when we were looking at them from month to month, it looks like that will be enough money. So again, we'll reevaluate into going into 2027 if something happens this year or going into next year that we think that should again be adjusted. So total operations, again, just around $9 million, increase of 3.94%. Any questions on any of that? And then what we do is we provide to you any operation and maintenance items that are over $2,500. So this drills down even line item type budget and lets you know any particular item that is over $2,500 that changed. And in the column, it says whether it was positive or negative. And I don't think that I'll go through these individually, but if you want to take a look at them. So the ones that I will point out is the retirement. I talked about that. We decreased that by 10,000 in interdepartmental, which is all the general government categories. There's the 11,600 for the property insurance that went up. I decreased the vandalism account. I had it at 10,000. Sometimes we have those things happen and they're not covered by insurance. And we haven't been using, I don't even really want to say this out loud, the 10,000, but I also do have designated funds to help with that if something does happen. So I felt comfortable doing that. Elections are up a small dollar amount of the election supplies. City attorney, I talked about that. There's the retirement for the police department went down 10,000. Josh and I talked about that.
Judy, is only when 2 retirements wrong? You got dropped 10,000 for government, 10,000 for police. The very first slide, it said 15,000.
Oh yeah, we talked about this, didn't we?
Very first slide says 15.
Yeah, so it should be, one of them is wrong. I would have to go into my detail, but I will mark that down. So one of these should be 5,000 and one should be 10. My guess is that the police department was lesser than ours because their budget is higher than ours. So I'm guessing theirs was 5 and ours was 10. But I'll take a second look at that. And or if I'm incorrect, I will drop the budget by $5,000. All right, page 12. I just had a movement between street and traffic lights. basically the same dollar amount, but we were spending, it was just based on history, spending more and less than the other. Otherwise, there's nothing. There's the library with their electric, water and sewer increase. They're going to see much larger bills over at their new building than they are actually seeing right now. So that's the increase for that. Any questions on that page? And we'll move to 13. There's the biggest one probably is the museum's increase of electric, water and sewer because they will be taking over the building. And they need that line item in order to pay for that. Otherwise, there really isn't much change on that page, small ones. And then 14, there's a small $1,000 for the senior bus, but otherwise this gives you the yearly totals. So for our health insurance, and this includes dental, but dental small compared to health. So our increase was $66,000. Without some of the changes that were made within the budget, that would have been over $100,000. The retirement and the reserve increase was $8,700. We had a very small increase in retirement percentages this year. And then Social Security is $14,600. And Social Security and Medicare actually we're required to submit 7.65. It's a match, both employee and employer. So that's 7.65%. So you just take the wages times 7.65, and that's what that number is. Any questions? All right, then on page 15, we go by fund. So the general fund revenues, 9,500,000. And then the expenditures at 9,500,000, and this does include the 500,000 for our capital projects and equipment. And then on the bottom is our debt service revenue that we had went through earlier, the $1.1 million. And 719,000 is principal and 387,000 of that interest. So here's how are we going to balance this budget? So you can see on the top there are expenditures, our salaries went up $192,000, and this is 4%. The fringes went up almost 90,000 at 4.62%. And again, we were looking at double digits, but there was a lot of changes within the fringe line, or the health insurance in particular, that brought that line item down. And then our operation and maintenance went up about $60,000. So the total increase to the budget is $341,000, about 3.73%. On the bottom, we have a tax levy of $3,250,000. Our operational revenues of about $5.5 million. Our sewer transfer of $176,000. Our Outagamie sales tax revenue of about $25,000. Investments, so we will again move some dollars from the investment that we have, the $100,000. And then we have the TID revenue of $60,000. So then that's where I usually sit. And then we go into how are we going to make things match? How are we going to make things balance? So that's where the $339,000 comes in. Okay. We spend a lot of time, I feel like, in February when we close out the year, getting ourselves ready for this budget. And I think I talked about this last year. We put money aside. We knew health insurance was going to increase. We had that feeling we weren't going to be staying at 0 or 1% forever. So we have those dollars. We have capital reserves. We have things that we can turn to at a time when you have a $9.5 million budget and you have $340,000 to make ends meet. So then that's what I start thinking about is the conversations we've had within our finance committee meeting. And then when we're closing out that budget in February, what we've talked about, and we talk about the fact that, next year, when we need some dollars, this is why we designate these funds. So what I'm suggesting is that we use $75,000 in health insurance reserve, and I'll go through where this will leave us after I'm finished with this. 164,000 in our capital. We do have TID increment that pays 2 of the debt service that I talked about. I pointed those out for Oshkosh Street. And then unassigned fund balance makes up the difference. So that total is 339,550. That makes our budget balanced for 2026, again, in the amount of $502,680.
Judy, I just want to point out for the salary, so if someone like on YouTube sees that, no, city staff is not getting a 4% increase. It's an overall increase based on our other half position with the building zoning position we're bringing on. Plus, we did give higher wages increases for many of our part-time employees, to try to get them a little bit closer to market. So not overall, every staff member is getting a 4% increase. Just want to point that out.
Correct. If you did it, so $40,000 of that was for the new position in the back. So you can subtract that off. If you're looking at a true percentage across the board, that would need to come out. And then Ginger also probably about $30,000 of increases within her departments. So $70,000. So you're going to drop that closer to about 2.99. You're going to come down almost 1%. So yes, because that's what you will hear is that, oh, they got a 4% increase. No, there's a half a position in there, and then we approved increases so that we could get people into our parks programs, or we could get people to work in our parks and recreation. Any questions on any of that? I'm gonna go to the very back page first, because I think I talked about this a little bit. So this is where you utilizing these reserve funds would leave us at the end of 2026. So I put together an estimate, and this is where, if you went to our finance packets, you would see that we are in a beginning balance of at the beginning of 2025 at about $1 million. We plan to use 825,000 in the budget. We had expenditures of almost 1.5 million. We have some additional revenue of 109,200. Some of that is the interest we will have, and then we had some rollover dollars in our capital that we didn't use. And then we had some capital items that didn't cost what we anticipated. So those kinds of things are the addition. And then here's the use in our current budget, the 164,551. So that would leave us with a little over 300,000 still in the capital budget going into our next budget is what we would anticipate. The retirement reserve is currently at 830. Adding 25,000 to that will leave that in a very healthy $855,000. And we go through that again in February. Also, I can show you that if everybody left that we owed dollars out of that fund, it would more than cover. Unassigned fund balance, we're currently at almost 3.2. The budget is at, again, 9,500,000. Would leave us at the same dollar amount because it's a balanced budget. And then if you take 25%, which is our policy retention, the difference is about $900,000 more than our policy. And then we will go back to the tax levy information. So the reason that this sometimes takes so long for me to get this in your hands is because our assessed value just came out on Friday. So until Friday, I don't know exactly where our tax rate is going to be. And Dave and I have had discussions about this in the mayor and Chad, and we would rather you know what the tax rate is going to look like than for me to estimate it. So that's kind of why, you don't get your information that you're, in the packet on Friday, and I got it out on Monday as quickly as we could. We did have some internet problems, or you would probably would have got it a little quicker than we got it on. I apologize for that. And so a lot of times this meeting is on Wednesday and not Tuesday, but I'm thinking that from here on out, we might try to do it prior to council. So we'll see how this works out and what the feedback is, but the 2026 levy information. So the general fund levy, 3,089,000. The debt service levy, of which we went through, is 1.1 million. So then you look at last year's debt service levy and last year's general fund levy. And so what is your increase? The increase is $182,401. So that makes sense, right? So we had about 400 or 380 in revenue or in expenditure side. We had 100 and some thousand in revenue, and this makes up the difference of 182,000. So the assessed tax rate, and this is I'm pretty confident in these numbers. For the Wapaka County side, the other thing I want to point out is our assessed value increased from 2025 of 392 million to 2026 of 402 million. And the tax rate would go from 10.44 on Wapaka and 10.84 in Wapaka County. Outagamie County would go from 10.43 to 10.87. So the increase on a $200,000 home in Wapaka County would be $86.47, and Outagamie would be $81.66. One of the things I can point out too is there is no recommendation for short-term debt. When I get this far, and after looking at the tax rate, I didn't feel like that was a good consideration going into next year. So that's where we sit with short-term debt for next year in this budget. Any questions, concerns, comments on anything?
Seeing no questions for Judy, let's move on to the next one, the wheel tax fund.
All right, so our wheel tax, and again, this is all estimated going into next year. Our 2025 carry forward was 168,000. We would expect about $130,000 in revenue. That would be almost $300,000. Our 25 budgeted items currently are at 130,000. So our expected carry forward would be $168,000 to help with anything potential projects going into 2026. Currently, we still have Spur Road and North Water Street Bridge listed as potential projects going into 2026. This also is a nice way, if we were to receive any funding out of Wapaka County, or get any grants out of there, that we could meet halfway and do our have our dollars available for our 50-50 match. But again, Robert's still working on what 2026 will look like. So I will update you as he has time to take a look at this and look at some other projects possibly for these dollars.
Questions on that? Yes, I'd like to thank you and Chad for all the work you do on that budget and all the numbers for us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other discussion, any of that? Seeing none. I would like to make a motion to recommend to council $1,106,288 for debt service.
Second.
Motion was made by myself, second by Mr. Herter. We're gonna take a vote on that?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Any further discussion? None, we'll do roll call. Motion carried 10-0. Next, I'd like to make a motion to recommend to council the general fund budget of $3,089,640 to an overall budget of $9,502,688.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Dorsey. Any further discussion? Take a vote. Motion carried 10-0. Next, I would like to make a motion to recommend to council the wheel tax fund as presented. Motion made and seconded by Mr. Ritchie. Any further discussion? Take a vote. Motion carried 9-0.
9-1.
9, sorry about that, 9 month, my bad. And that will be it on that. I'd like to schedule a capital equipment and project meeting for December 3rd. Immediately following the finance and personnel meeting. Everybody okay with that? Just be right after our regular scheduled finance meeting. Okay, no motion needed on that. Last thing we had for adjournment. Motion to adjourn. Second. Motion made by Mr. Roberts, second by Mr. Pache for adjournment. Any further discussion? Take a roll call or just? I'll take a vote.
Sure.
Bernie. Motion carried 10-0. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.